Stick around to the end of the video to find out how to enter the 3 lightsaber giveaways. Thanks everybody, and let's get right into it. Our story begins aboard the Invisible Hand flagship, as Anakin Skywalker has become someone new, someone much more powerful than ever before, someone that could simply decide what he wants, and then take it. Dooku told Anakin about what the dark side could bring him, and so Anakin was dipping into the darkness just enough to win this fight. And Anakin decided to win by doing whatever it takes, as he and Dooku spun their blades around each other, and Anakin decided that Dooku will lose the same hand that he took from him on Geonosis. No, Dooku will lose both hands, Anakin decides, and he slices cleanly through flesh and bone. The hands fall to the floor, and Dooku's red blade floats right into Anakin's hand, as if it were natural for the young boy. Dooku crumpled to his knees, face blank, mouth hanging open in shock, and Dooku looked over to Palpatine, seeing a real, genuine smile on Palpatine's face, as he told Anakin that he has done well. And then, Palpatine tells Anakin to kill him now. Dooku began to panic, as he realized this was indeed a trap, but he was the bait. The trap was perfectly designed by Palpatine to bring Anakin home, and have him dip into the darkness, begin his dark descent. Dooku was flashing through all of his years since joining the dark side, realizing now that he was never the true apprentice. He was never going to be the heir to the power of the Sith. He was merely a tool. And he looked up at Anakin, hesitating from his years of Jedi training. And across the room, Obi Wan Kenobi was beginning to wake up sooner than expected. He first started to wake up as Anakin cut through Dooku's wrists. The sounds of the battle ending caused him to stir, and Kenobi's head was ringing from his own defeat. His vision was blurry, ears ringing, and the balcony was on top of his legs, in a way that should have left him paralyzed if it was maybe an inch closer to him. Obi-Wan used the Force to clear his mind from the pain, and he was able to glance over, seeing Anakin standing over the helpless, unarmed Dooku. Obi-Wan then heard the Chancellor hiss at Anakin to kill him, and when Anakin hesitated, Palpatine again coldly demanded that Anakin do it, and Obi-Wan wanted to yell out, but it was too late. By the time he truly realized what was going on, Anakin snipped off Dooku's head, and it rolled to the floor, blank eyes staring over at Obi-Wan, as Obi-Wan felt the cloud of the dark side inside of this very room. Not only had Anakin found a way to defeat Dooku, but he executed him in cold blood. And then he heard Palpatine tell him that this was only natural. He wanted revenge. Anakin managed to say this was not the Jedi way, but Palpatine wasn't having it, and Obi-Wan was still extremely confused. And now, he decided it was time to speak up. He asked for a little help, acting as if he were just waking up, and Anakin looked over with a red face from embarrassment, wondering how much of this Obi-Wan actually saw. Obi-Wan didn't really say anything, but he gave Anakin a look that Anakin knew extremely well by now. It was a look that simply said, "We will talk about this later," and a wave of shame washed over Anakin as he ran over to help Obi-Wan get up. Inside of Anakin's head, new thoughts were circulating as he came to grips with his murder. He asked himself, who am I? Was he the great Jedi Knight with no fear? Was he the best star pilot in the galaxy? A hero? A husband? Could he be any of these things and still do what he has done? Dooku was an unarmed prisoner, the most valuable prisoner in the galaxy, and Anakin couldn't stop himself from murdering him. Guilt hit him like a punch to his heart as he lifted the balcony off of Kenobi, allowing him to scramble to his feet, retrieve his saber. It wasn't Anakin's first murder by any means, Prince Talmeric of Mandalore, Admiral Trench more recently, but this was different. And as always, Anakin forced himself to push these emotions deep down inside of his furnace of a heart, the furnace that was beginning to overflow with these emotions, and he focused everything they had on getting out of here safely. As they left the room, Obi-Wan could still feel the cloud of darkness surrounding Palpatine and his student. With Dooku dead, Obi-Wan would have expected the darkness to fade, but instead, it seemed to be growing. And Obi-Wan recalled what he just witnessed, Dooku defeated and unarmed, as the Chancellor essentially ordered Anakin to kill him. And Anakin showed what he was truly capable of. Obi-Wan knew the Council would find all of this quite interesting, and so he helped Anakin find a way out of here, as the two of them awkwardly acted like Obi-Wan didn't just watch Anakin go against all of his training. Sometime later, as Windu looked up to the skies of Coruscant, the Invisible Hand flagship pierced the clouds and began descending fast towards the surface. or at least what was left of the flagship. By now it was really just half a ship, and there was zero doubt about who was executing this landing sequence. Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One. No one else could have landed this ship. In fact, no one else could have even come close. And Windu waited at the executive building as the ship crashed and emergency rescue teams found Skywalker, Kenobi, and Palpatine, all somehow still alive. And by the time Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Palpatine arrived back at the executive building, Windu could feel something was extremely off. He looked over to the shuttle, where Obi-Wan was waiting, and Obi-Wan gestured as if he needed to speak with Windu. Windu looked at Anakin, and a few things could be certain. Anakin was not the same young man that the Council sent to the Outer Rim over 5 months ago. He looked much more powerful, confident, and Palpatine would soon inform Windu that Dooku is dead, thanks to young Skywalker here. Windu looked at Anakin, and Anakin looked to the ground with discomfort, as if he were remembering something. Palpatine chuckled, saying Anakin is too modest. But Mace didn't think Anakin's sudden change in demeanor was modesty. Something happened on that ship. Something with Palpatine. No one on the Jedi Council was comfortable with Anakin's relationship with the Chancellor, and Windu wasn't exactly pleased that Palpatine seemed to be speaking for Anakin, as Anakin tried to sink away. So Windu simply told Anakin that he's sure the Council will be very interested in Anakin's full report, with just enough emphasis on the word full to get his point across. He told Palpatine the Jedi will put everything they have into finding Grievous, and then he allowed the politicians and Anakin to move past him, as Mace hurried over to the shuttle where Obi-Wan was waiting. Once inside, Obi-Wan gave Windu a look that had become all too familiar over the years, a look of disappointment, and Obi-Wan began unraveling everything he saw inside of the spire. Dooku, defeated on his knees without any hands, looking up in desperation and confusion as Palpatine ordered Anakin to kill him. Obi-Wan described Anakin's hesitation, but Palpatine just continued to order Anakin to do it until it was done. Obi-Wan said he was too weak to stop it, but it were as if something shifted in Anakin. Both Jedi felt the dark cloud of the Sith on this planet, and indeed it felt as if it were growing with the death of Dooku instead of shrinking. And so Windu let Obi-Wan in on what only he and Yoda knew so far. Before the attack on Coruscant, Windu was investigating a lead on Darth Sidious, and he traced the Sith Lord from an abandoned building in the industrial sector all the way back to 500 Republica, the building where the most wealthy and powerful people in the galaxy reside, including Palpatine and those in his inner circle. So Windu told Obi-Wan that they must consider the possibility of what Dooku told Obi-Wan on Geonosis being a reality, that Darth Sidious is already in control of the Senate and is working in Palpatine's circle, whether Palpatine knows it or not. May said that Sate Pestage and Mas Amedda are suspects, maybe even one of the Red Guards, and the only reason Palpatine isn't a suspect is because he already controls the galaxy with all of his amendments to the Constitution. But, of course, the Jedi didn't know that Palpatine's ultimate plans end with the Jedi being completely wiped out. Obi-Wan asked Windu what they must do, and Windu said they must do whatever they can to keep Anakin and Palpatine apart from each other. Palpatine goading Anakin into murdering Dooku is awful, and they cannot allow Palpatine to just continue to take Anakin from them. They just need to find an excuse to get Anakin out of here. And Obi-Wan glanced back down to the executive building. He could feel a new feeling in the Force, a feeling of joy, and Obi-Wan suddenly knew the perfect way to separate Anakin from Palpatine: Padme. And so, the next many hours would go by with Obi-Wan and Windu discussing what to do with Anakin, up until the next morning, when Anakin would be called to the Jedi Council. Anakin initially planned to visit Yoda alone on this morning, but he was instead told to go to the Council. Anakin was feeling great fear in his heart, as last night he had nightmares of Padme dying, nightmares that he was promising himself would not come true. He would do anything to save her. And as Anakin stood in the center of the Council, Yoda informed him that they have another mission for him. Anakin's head immediately began to spin, and he looked around the room, desperately saying that he can't go on another mission. He just got back from 5 months in the Outer Rim. So Mace Windu shrugged his shoulders, then said they can find someone else to protect Senator Amidala. And suddenly all of Anakin's fears washed away, as he stood up straight and said, actually, it's fine, he will do it. Obi-Wan could only slightly shake his head. Anakin wasn't the best at being subtle, and Windu would tell Anakin that Senator Amidala is being sent to Mandalore to ensure that the peace treaties between Mandalore and the Republic stay intact, despite the Republic invasion of the planet. And now Anakin was nearly beaming with excitement. A mission with Padme, Ahsoka, and Rex. He was ready to leave immediately, and Anakin would be dismissed as everyone in the council chambers looked around, and Windu said that Palpatine will not be pleased with the authorization of this mission. The relationship between Chancellor and Council was already heavily fractured, but Yoda said this is what they must do. Separating Anakin from Palpatine, and potentially the Sith, is a risk they must take. Kit Fisto spoke up, saying that if the Sith soon reveal themselves, wouldn't it be best to have Skywalker here to fight? And Windu responded by saying that if the Sith makes Anakin choose between Palpatine and the Jedi, it may not go the way they hope. Anakin would leave the temple, running down to the Republic hangar. He was about to board the Republic cruiser, where Padme was waiting, when a voice called out from behind him. Anakin turned to see Obi-Wan smiling down at him. Obi-Wan simply told Anakin that the Force will be with him. Anakin nodded to his master and said the same as the two brothers separated from each other for the first time in a while. Anakin hurried down to the cruiser, making his way to the bridge and eventually down to the barracks to finally find Padme, preparing for the mission to go over the mission treaties between Mandalore and the Republic. Anakin took a seat right next to her, and he just embraced her presence, knowing he will not let her die. The ship would rise through Coruscant and soon blast off into hyperspace, and in his office, Chancellor Palpatine was informed that a Venator has taken off, and when Palpatine learned of who was on board, he would quickly become rather enraged. Anakin was no longer here. This would certainly disrupt his plans. He was going to make Anakin his personal representative on the Jedi Council, and the dominoes would fall perfectly for him to become the next Sith. Palpatine let his anger and rage flow through him, and then he decided to continue the rest of his plans on schedule. The Jedi can hide Anakin, but they cannot take him away forever. But with Anakin being off-world, Mace Windu would turn all of his attention back to finding Sidious. He knew it was no coincidence that Coruscant was attacked as soon as he was getting close to finding the truth, and he would reignite his investigations into the 500 Republica building. Many hours would go by in the Republic Venator in hyperspace, as Anakin and Padme spent time with each other. Padme was rather focused on her work, but Anakin just loved being in her presence. It was perfect, and before long, they would come out of hyperspace above Mandalore. The sun was coming up on the planet, and the Council made arrangements for Padme to negotiate with Bo-Katan and the others now in charge of Mandalore to ensure that peace remains between Mandalore and the Republic. Anakin and Padme went their separate ways, as Anakin would find Ahsoka and Rex watching Maul get loaded onto the ship that would be taking all of them home. Anakin told Ahsoka that he was rather impressed, and now both his former master and his former Padawan have defeated Maul, and Anakin sarcastically said he'll have to be the one to do it next time Maul escapes. Anakin would walk around the area with Rex and Ahsoka, catching up, learning all about the mission, and it would be a peaceful moment as Padme negotiated inside. But on Coruscant, things were beginning to escalate quickly. Windu, putting his full attention into finding Sidious, led him and his squad of clones to find a rather interesting discovery. With high-level imaging scans, Mace and the clones found that only one set of footprints repeatedly led from the tunnel all the way to the industrial sector and then up through 500 Republica, and these specific prints took them to the Chancellor's suite, leading Mace to know one thing for certain. Palpatine has been to the Sith lair, either to speak with the Sith Lord, or because he is the Sith Lord. And Mace knew there was no more time to waste. The Council was just called into meeting because Grievous has been discovered, but Windu had even better information for the Council. And ultimately, when Windu brought this information up, Yoda said they must send a Jedi strike team to Palpatine's office immediately. He was on Kashyyyk, so he could not go, and Obi-Wan was sent to Utapau to destroy Grievous, but Windu put together his team of 4 Jedi Masters to go and confront Palpatine. He would be under arrest for treason against the Republic, and if need be, he would be destroyed. And so Palpatine was seated calmly in his office chair when the 4 Jedi entered, igniting their lightsabers, telling him he is under arrest for treason. Palpatine slowly stood up, giving a kind smile to the Jedi, and he began pacing the room, telling the Jedi this is beyond illegal. The Senate, the courts will never stand for this. Palpatine got behind his communicator, picking up a bottle of fancy wine, and he began pouring it into a glass. The Jedi told him to stand down, come quietly now, and Palpatine put the glass to his lips, taking a sip and telling the Jedi he's been waiting for this for a long time. And with a flick of his wrist, the wine bottle shattered, and suddenly, Sazy fell to his knees, blood spurting out of his neck. Sidious threw a shard of the bottle at him, while the Jedi were distracted. And now, as Sazy fell dead, Sidious spun through the air, igniting a saber and quickly killing both Aegon Kolar and Kit Fisto as they were looking down at Sazy. Windu ignited his purple blade, but Sidious used a massive force push, sending Windu flipping out of the room. Sidious then slammed the office door shut, locking it and moving back towards his communicator, flipping it on to speak with the Grand Army of the Republic. And as Windu's lightsaber was jammed into the blast door, melting an opening for him to get back in, Sidious gave an order to the clone troopers across the galaxy. Execute Order 66. Windu finally melted down an opening, and he pushed through the door to see Sidious smiling at him. The smile radiated pure evil, and Windu could feel the dark cloud over the Force, spreading both all the way through the galaxy, while also centering inside of this very room. Windu held up his purple blade, knowing he was the only thing standing between the galaxy becoming an empire run by the Sith. Across the galaxy on Mandalore, Rex stepped away from Anakin and Ahsoka for a moment to receive new orders. He went over to Jesse, Oppo, and a group of clones, as both Anakin and Ahsoka suddenly felt a change in the Force, as if thousands of Jedi lives suddenly blinked out in a matter of seconds. And then, it happened. Rex led the charge, as he and the 501st clone suddenly ran in, firing at the Jedi. Anakin and Ahsoka quickly stood side by side, lightsabers ignited in a blaze of blue, deflecting the relentless assault of the 501st. Both of them tried calling out to the clones, but it was no use. Blaster bolts filled the air, forcing the Jedi into a desperate retreat, as the overwhelming firepower drove them back towards the Mandalorian palace. Ahsoka's agility matched Anakin's ferocity, and the two of them forced a narrow path through the onslaught, trying not to kill any of the clones. The familiar bond between Jedi and troops was gone, and there was no time for questions. Anakin leaped over a crumpled barricade, shielding Ahsoka with a forceful push of the Force that sent several clones sprawling away. The two of them raced up the palace stairs, blaster fire intensifying behind them, before they finally burst through the palace doors, slamming them shut with the Force. And inside, the Mandalorian leaders were stunned by this intrusion. Padme, standing at the table with Bo-Katan and her advisors, turned towards Anakin with alarm. Anakin had to quickly explain what was going on. Something has happened. The Jedi Order is in danger. Anakin asked Bo to free Maul. He will provide a distraction, and despite the resistance on her face, Bo did reluctantly comply, rallying her warriors to escort her. The sound of the explosions and the shooting outside grew louder as the clones pressed against the palace defenses. Anakin and Ahsoka got to a balcony, and Anakin carried Padme as they jumped down into the city. On Coruscant, clone troopers marched towards the Jedi Temple, and Mace Windu was doing everything he could to stop Sidious. And he was winning. The two of them spun around each other, both of their faces filled with hatred, and they cut through the large window. Mace then flicked his own blade, stabbing into Sidious's hand, and the red blade fell away into the night. This would be Sidious's end. His final move was beginning the destruction of the Jedi Order, and as Windu stabbed through Sidious's heart, the Sith Lord died with a smile, telling Windu his precious Jedi Order is gone. But Windu said not yet, and he hurried to the temple to help with the defense. On Mandalore, Maul would emerge from his prison and immediately call for his ship, waiting for him on the Mandalore moon. He wielded his dark power with his reckless anger, and the clones were charging right at him. The freed Sith tore through waves of clones. He didn't have his saber, but he didn't need it. Clones fell in droves as Maul made his way into the courtyard where his ship was descending down. Clones kept coming at him, and Maul didn't hesitate to destroy each one of them. The Mandalorian skies lit up with the arrival of Maul's vessel, engines roaring as it descended through the courtyard. And as it landed, Maul would see Anakin, Ahsoka, and Padme running towards him. Maul would notice Anakin holding Padme's hand as they ran, and then Maul noticed that Padme was pregnant, and with a wicked smile, Maul used the Force to pull Padme towards him. Then, he jumped into his ship with the Senator. Skywalker's child would serve his agenda. The ship took off, and Anakin's fury erupted as Maul's ship began to ascend. He reached out with his hands, entire body trembling with raw power, as he seized the vessel with the Force. Ahsoka stood behind him, deflecting the torrent of fire from the clones, who'd regrouped and were now swarming the courtyard. Her movements were fluid, and she used Anakin's training to survive. The ship groaned under Anakin's grip, engines straining, and slowly it would drag back down to the surface. With a final surge, Anakin slammed the ship into the ground, the impact sending a shockwave all around them. Maul slowly emerged from the wreckage, his body battered, but his anger was rising. And Anakin wasted no time. His blade was igniting in a flash as he launched himself at the former Sith, and Maul never stood a chance after trying to take Padme from him. Anakin ended Maul's life once and for all, and together he and Ahsoka boarded Maul's ship as they took off into hyperspace, accessing all of the possible emergency codes for the Jedi. It would be around 24 hours later that things around the galaxy were beginning to settle. Palpatine was dead, the Separatists were fractured and disappearing without Grievous or Dooku, and the entirety of the Jedi Order was either dead or missing. On Coruscant, Senators Amidala, Mothma, and Organa would deliver remarks and bring proof from the Jedi of Palpatine being the real traitor. And on Tython, around 1,000 surviving Jedi were gathered here. Mace Windu got some of the survivors out of the temple, but so many died. On Tython, Yoda, Obi Wan, Anakin, Windu, Ahsoka, and so many others would begin to regroup, as it was time for the Jedi Order to essentially start over. Within a year, Anakin and Padme's marriage was out in the open, and the Jedi would let it be. The twins were born safely, and they were part of the next generation of Jedi as they were rebuilding and funded on Tython. The clones went through mass inhibitor chip removal, and eventually Rex and the 501st would try to make up with Anakin and Ahsoka. It was tough, but the clones would try and find forgiveness as security members of the Republic. Years would go by, and the Jedi Order would survive, with Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi Wan training the twins, as Padme would become Chancellor of the rebuilding Republic. And folks, that's our story for today. Giveaway time, let's do it. Thanks to Fantasy Sabers. You guys know Fantasy Folklore, he's a great guy. A couple of them that work on their channel over there, but yeah, they've got a nice site, fantasysabers.com, that I'll be using for the giveaways. The first part will be 2 sabers. They're both called the Sun affordable version, so I'm just getting 2 of those. But then the third saber in the giveaway will be just basically up to whoever wins. So to enter, go to the description or the pinned comment and click the link there. It'll ask for some of your information, some stuff like that. Thank you all for 80,000 subscribers. That's pretty insane. Yeah, the dream is to hit 100 someday. We'll see if it happens. That'd be pretty cool. Who knows, right? Just, subscribe. If you don't subscribe, you can't be in the giveaway. That's like the only rule. And yeah, thanks a ton. Otherwise, thanks. Oh yeah, happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone celebrating. Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thanks for 80K. Fun video today, and I'll see you in the next video.